Picture a team that has won the championship only once in 80 years. Maybe it's a coincidence, maybe it's bad luck, but the Atlanta Hawks are one of the NBA's oldest franchises. We're going to talk about a club that has been based in 4 different cities, won a single championship ring, and has both discovered and let slip through its fingers some of the greatest stars in history. This team didn't arrive at its current identity in just a single season. Now, I'm going to tell you about the 10 critical moments that forever changed the history of the Atlanta Hawks, and we'll count down from 10 to 1. Believe me, at number 1, many of you will see something you never expected. Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We'll continue to be here with content you'll love once the NBA season starts. Number 10, the story of the Doctor. 54 years ago in 1972, the Hawks were still a young team in Atlanta. They were struggling to sell tickets and searching for their identity. Right at that moment, an incredible opportunity knocked on their door. Julius Erving, also known as Dr. J, a genius who soared through the air, hung from the rim, and redefined the game. The Hawks signed the deal and brought him to training camp. He shared the court with Pete Maravich and even played alongside him in preseason games, but there was a problem. Irving's rights belonged to someone else. The Milwaukee Bucks had drafted him, while the Virginia Squires argued that his contract was still valid. The league stepped in. The Hawks were fined $25,000 for every preseason game they let him play. A court order pulled Dr. J off the court, and Erving left without ever playing a single official game in an Atlanta uniform. This incident may well be the first chapter in the story of stars who slipped through the cracks. Number 9, rebirth. In the early 2000s, the Hawks were officially at the bottom of the league. The arenas were empty, and there was no hope, but slowly a plan was taking shape. In the 2004 draft, the team selected 2 young wing players, Josh Childress and Josh Smith. A year later, one of the most controversial decisions in history took place, and the Hawks selected Marvin Williams with the number 2 pick, even though true point guards like Chris Paul and Deron Williams were available. That summer, Joe Johnson arrived via trade, and in 2007, Al Horford was drafted with the number 3 pick. Thus, the core of the team was formed. The short-term results were modest. However, in 2008, this young team pushed the defending champion Boston Celtics to a 7-game series. Atlanta had become a contender for the first time in a long while, and this group kicked off a streak of 10 consecutive playoff appearances. But the question of Chris Paul always hung in the air. If he had come, might a window to a championship have opened? Number 8, the city that bid farewell to Neek. In February 1994, the Hawks had one of the best rosters in the Eastern Conference, and the city wasn't even aware it was about to lose a legend. Dominique Wilkins, the heart of Atlanta, was in the final year of his contract and was now 34 years old. Management wanted to trade him to the Los Angeles Clippers in exchange for Danny Manning and a first-round draft pick. The fans were in an uproar, and Wilkins was deeply upset. He described the trade in his own words as the most senseless move he could imagine. Despite having a strong roster that season, the Hawks were eliminated in the second round by the Indiana Pacers. Manning, meanwhile, left when summer came. Number 7, a high-quality showdown. On May 22, 1988, at Boston Garden, in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference semifinals, 2 men truly took over the court. Dominique Wilkins and Larry Bird. Wilkins scored 47 points that night, shooting 19 of 23 from the field. He played nearly flawlessly, but Bird scored 20 of his 34 points in the final quarter and finished 15 for 24 from the field. Boston won by a very close margin, 118 to 116. The Hawks were eliminated, but this was no ordinary loss because the Hawks of the Wilkins era were showing us their peak. They had officially gone head-to-head with a dynasty. Perhaps this was the epitome of an era, magnificent, thrilling, yet one that always fell just short. Had they won that Game 7, the entire story of that era might have been remembered differently. Number 6, the noise behind the scenes. 12 years ago, things seemed to be going well for the Hawks. But behind the scenes, it was a mess. General manager Danny Ferry had made racist remarks about Luol Deng. He had said of Deng, "He's got a little bit of African in him, but I don't mean that in a bad way," and compared him to someone selling counterfeit goods from behind a nice storefront. An audio recording surfaced, then came a racist email from an owner, and the club was put up for sale. In 2015, a group led by Tony Ressler took over the team. The reported sale price, including debt, was $850 million, while the figure approved by the NBA was $730 million. The years-long ownership chaos thus came to an end. The resulting stability carried the team to the present day, that is 2026, and a new corporate identity was born. Had that ownership change not occurred, the foundation of the modern Hawks likely would not have been laid. Number 5, a championship run without superstars. The previous season, the team had won just 38 games. No one expected much. Then a miracle happened. In the 2015 season, under head coach Mike Budenholzer in his second year, the Hawks racked up 60 wins. That's officially a franchise record. They had effectively become the #1 team in the East. In January, they went on a 17-0 streak, all without a single superstar. Despite this, 4 different players were selected for the All-Star game: Horford, Teague, Korver, and Millsap. Budenholzer was named Coach of the Year. In the playoffs, they defeated Brooklyn and Washington. However, they couldn't overcome a 4-0 deficit against LeBron James's Cleveland in the conference finals. This team proved that a season could be dominated even without stars. This is essentially the blueprint for modern Atlanta's philosophy of play. Number 4, the human highlight reel is coming to town. Atlanta was looking for a new face after Maravich on September 2nd, 1982, and we witnessed one of the most lopsided trades in history. Wilkins had been drafted 3rd overall by the Utah Jazz that summer, but he didn't want to play for Utah. The Jazz, meanwhile, were in serious financial trouble. They urgently needed cash to balance their payroll. Atlanta stepped in immediately. Owner Ted Turner acquired Wilkins' rights in exchange for John Drew, Freeman Williams, and exactly $1 million in cash. The short-term impact was immediate. In the long run, Wilkins became the franchise's all-time leading scorer, a 9-time All-Star, a Hall of Famer, and the very embodiment of 1980s Atlanta basketball. Number 3, 4 different cities, one identity. Let me ask you this. Do you know where this franchise was born? Definitely not in Atlanta. In fact, it never even stayed in the same place. The story begins in Buffalo in 1946. The team then moved to Moline and took the name Tri-Cities Blackhawks. It joined the NBA in 1949, became the Milwaukee Hawks in 1951, and moved to St. Louis in 1955. Finally, on May 3rd, 1968, owner Ben Kerner sold the team to Thomas Cousins and former Georgia Governor Carl Sanders. The Hawks had now moved to Atlanta. Suddenly, they were the only NBA team in the South. So why did this change everything? Because without that move, there would be no Atlanta Hawks. That decision essentially gave the franchise a sense of hometown identity. They had become the South's team, and that nomadic spirit was part of the club's identity. Number 2, a destiny that changed overnight. 8 years ago, June 21st, 2018, draft night, and the Hawks were taking the biggest gamble of their lives. The team selected Luka Doncic with the 3rd overall pick, but they didn't keep him. They immediately traded him to Dallas. In return, they received Trae Young with the 5th overall pick and a protected future 1st-round pick. That pick later became Cam Reddish. In the short term, Trae Young performed well. In 2021, he led the team to an Eastern Conference Finals run that no one expected. They defeated New York and Philadelphia, but in the series where Trae got injured, they were eliminated by the Milwaukee Bucks in 6 games. In the long run, however, this trade defined the modern era. Trae became the face of the franchise, but Luka emerged as one of the league's best players. And this became perhaps Atlanta's most debated question. The story doesn't end here. In January 2026, the Hawks traded Trae Young to the Washington Wizards in exchange for C.J. McCollum and Corey Kispert. An era came to a close and a new face emerged, Jalen Johnson. Young, versatile, a first-time All-Star, and then an All-NBA selection. Under Quinn Snyder, the team practically soared through the second half of the season without Trey and made it to the 2026 playoffs. They were eliminated by the Knicks in 6 games in the first round, but the future looked promising. Number 1, the most expensive trade in history. Yes, we've arrived at that pivotal moment that changed everything. 70 years ago in 1956, the team was still in St. Louis. They held the 2nd overall pick in the draft and used it to select Bill Russell. But they didn't keep him. Owner Ben Kerner traded Russell's rights to the Boston Celtics in exchange for Ed Macauley and Cliff Hagan. In the short term, the trade paid off. The Hawks lost to Boston in overtime in the 1957 finals, but they got their revenge in 1958 with Bob Pettit's 50 points and 19 rebounds in Game 6. They defeated the Celtics 110-109. Pettit scored 19 of his team's final 21 points all by himself. That was the franchise's first, and to this day, only championship. But look at the long term. Bill Russell won 11 championships in 13 years with Boston. In other words, the Hawks handed their greatest rival, the greatest dynasty in history, on a silver platter. His only championship ring also came from that same trade. As a result, Bob Pettit remains the only MVP in franchise history, and since 1958, Atlanta has endured one of the league's longest championship droughts. So why is this entry number 1? Because this decision officially defines the club's entire relationship with winning and with Boston. It gave them both their only victory and their eternal regret at the same time. That's why we can call it the most expensive trade in history. Yes, these were the 10 moments that critically shaped the history of the Atlanta Hawks. This franchise isn't just about championships or star players. It's a mix of victories and defeats, missed opportunities and comebacks. And now I'll leave it up to you. Do you think our number 1 entry is accurate? Post your own ranking in the comments. By the way, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.